Okay, so yeah, back to this. Yeah, sometimes you get some light skinned people, they get jealous and everything. But to me, it's like this. My honest opinion is this. I don't understand why you have a fit over my phenotype. Like, I wasn't even talking about my phenotype. I talked about my skin tone, of which I only mentioned that with some people claiming that I bleach. So you should go to them saying, oh, how come you're saying she's bleaching when she's not all that light, right? But no, instead you are harping on hoping that I'm bleaching too. And it's like, this is my natural skin tone without any makeup or anything. And yes, this is my natural hair. I had a photo collection back in the day where I would show all different photos of me in this I just took a couple photos during this time period. And actually, I look a little bit darker in this lighting than what I look like when I took a few other photos. Anyway, you were saying on anthropology, um, specifically for me, my phenotype specifically veers closer to a phenotype that doesn't specifically have Afrocentric features. Let's just say that. I mean, I'm wearing lipstick here, like a little bit, I think. My lips aren't usually that color. Something making my lips a little bit bigger and plumping them up a little there. So, I mean, like, I'm still not even being registered in any regard as African. There's Mexican, there's Portuguese, there's Armenian, there's Vatican, mainly Italian. I'm thinking, same thing here. This is more of my more, I guess, Eurocentric look. But yeah, same thing basically. It's same more like Latino, Spanish, Southern European phenotype as far as my facial features. When I work, I specifically use this photo. This is just me using contacts and black hair, but other than that, that's all me. And makeup, of course. But yeah, this is my work photo. And when I work, yeah, generally my experience there is not as a black person. You think someone's gonna call me up and talk about slave play as a black woman in this photo? I wouldn't mind. I mean, like if that was the case, then we would talk about that. I get money, and I probably would raise the price for that. But nobody does that at work. And if you know my job, you would already know this. I make six figures at work. Specifically, a major part of what I do is I'm a dominatrix, so, the whole, I guess, slave play wouldn't be the best thing, but there are plenty of ebony PSOs, basically, that do my type of work, and many of the time they do have that dominant black woman to a white man, a submissive white man. They tend to do that. But I don't get those types of calls. Instead, what I get is like cooks. I get calls like more so pertaining to cooks, not just cooks, but like black men who have a fixation on being called like kind of racist names, things of that nature. I just had a call like that actually. Specifically, was like wanting me to use the N word in reference to his, parts. Um, so I mean, like, hey, I generally make a lot of money degrading men. I also make money, like, I like this one guy. Like, I've talked about him before, but when we talk, I talk about running him over with a semi truck with 18 wheels over his fucking head. And I go all in too. It's like real wild and stuff. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm more dominant basically. So I guess you could say, like, with my work, I do. But just with race and stuff, back to what we're talking about specifically, it's usually, if it's about race, it's about fixation with a big black penis and me being a white woman or a non-black woman. Sometimes they want like a Latina or Asian. That works pretty well. So for me, I don't have any problems with that. And in my experience in real life, now I generally don't walk around looking like this because It's a lot of work, really, honestly. It's a whole get ready with me. It's contacts, it's black hair. It's a lot. And it is a little less on the lips, as you can see. I do a lot less work on my lips there because on my lips, I tend to be a little bit more. When I do it, I don't really do anything besides put lipstick on, maybe. And just have my lips just normal instead of like kind of like. You know how if you make a certain expression, your lips kind of poof out a little, and if you don't, if you just leave it regular, it kind of just sits in your mouth, kind of. I have like a part of my mouth where I can kind of like, I can color it, I can kind of like dry it out a bit, and I can kind of like make it where it's a part of my lip where I make lipstick. And then when I don't want to, I just leave it alone, and then it kind of like sips back into my mouth, kind of like thing. It's weird. But yeah, I guess you could have in hot guard. There was less work to be done. I ate something hot. The roof of my mouth was like melted. But anyway, so in my regular life, I do not get perceived like that. This no, I don't usually get perceived as specifically white or anything like that. Really, I've been perceived, asked about if I was many different ethnicities, and it's like it really depends. Like, sometimes people will think I am, for example, shoot, I have a lot of dead skin. Oh, but anyway, I have a lot of different experiences I've had in my real life. My real life, I've had situations where I specifically was asked if I was Cuban, Puerto Rican, Dominican, very rarely, if I have curly hair, and I have to look really black for Dominican. That's not usually a common one. Usually I get more Brazilian, I get Cuban, uh, Puerto Rican, not really Mexican, but I did once with this one guy who was more on the blacker side of Mexican, I would say. Then, like, some other things I get confused for is like Indian, uh, East African. East African is a common one, and that's pretty understandable because for me, I specifically tend to um, think my heritage is more close to that, I guess you could say, being Fulani descent, and that's the only tribe that I'm connected to genetically is Fulani. So, I mean, because of that, I do have a connection, and many of the time, many Fulani people are confused for East Africans by East African people. Now, also other places like North Africa. This is why I say plenty of times, I've specifically said this before, that for me personally, I've had several situations where people would talk about black people, talk about race and things of that nature among liberals and stuff. And they talk about the hierarchy of race, right? And then they use different stereotypes to talk about race. They never turn to me and asked me my experiences as a black woman. They actually asked me my experiences as a North African woman of a good portion of Middle Eastern and North African descent. And that's what I was really actually asked. And honestly, to my personal experience, it kind of makes sense, I guess, if you look at people like Imam Hammam and things of that nature who kind of have more of a southern Maghrebi look. It kind of makes sense why that's done that way. So, anyway, that's my experience. In my regular life, I've never really been assumed to just be black. It's kind of weird that you would say that though, because I'm like, even this person is not a black person, and this person gets more black than I do. More black than I do here. I'm not wearing any makeup, and that's my natural hair. So, I mean, our hair texture is kind of similar, too, honestly. Okay, I guess hers is a little straighter, but not that different. Um, So I mean, like, and then these people are like East Africans, and you see, they get the same results as I do, basically. Basically, Southern European esque kind of phenotype. Of course, not her. She's black and Arab. It's a different thing. No, actually, Persian. But as you can see, it's usually that combination Italian, Spanish, Mexican, Arab. Sometimes it's Portuguese that's in there as well. Hers is even more. She's Somali, I think. I don't think she's Ethiopian. Somalis tend to have a bit of a different phenotype. And you can see here there's more of an Afro phenotype for her. As you can see, Brazilian actually goes in as African as well. And as you can see here, this woman, see, when they have wider features, they get either Brazilian or African. African again. You see? It's always African in their options. Now, you could see for her, she has sharper features. She's even said this herself. She still gets African. She is not even a black person. She has more Afrocentric features than I do, according to this. So when it comes to anthropology, my facial features, that's one thing that specifically has always been where I have always been told that I don't quite have the same features as African American, well, black people, let's just say. Black American people, I think, kind of have the same features because black Americans can have like narrow features because of the mixture in black Americans. It's like a quarter of ancestry that is mixed, basically, that is Caucasian, which is in common actually with my results as well, actually. And this one, she obviously has Africa. Another one with Africa, and she's a similar color to me. See Rihanna here. I guess in some photos, Rihanna's angles can make her look a little bit more African than others. And I wanted to show some of Anna since it was video on her, and I gave her several photos to see, like, can she possibly have a photo without African in her analysis. And no, you see, a lot of the time with these type of sectors, their main insecurity is their skin, like their hair texture and their facial features. Those are the main things you guys have issues with usually, and you tend to be kind of angry at other people because not everyone has those same problems with their facial features like you do, you know. So then, even though someone might be darker than you, like I am darker than you, and I'm not talking about Anna, I'm talking about this commenter here. Just because you were saying that you were lighter than me, it doesn't really change that your features are going to be more Afrocentric than mine. And that's how people are going to racially define people, is by the facial features. It is what it is. I think it's constant that you guys try to come up with this idea in your head that I want to come up with some idea that you must be hiding being a black person. Is it just because I'm in this sector that you think I must look more like you? But it's like, no, I'm sorry. Did you just see the East Africans? They don't look like you either. These East Africans do not look like you either. It doesn't mean that they're not going to obviously sometimes overlap in the same sector as black Americans, you know. But obviously, this is not the same as this or this. And the dots are very important to show the difference, the distance in your eyes, and the distance of your nose and your lips, And you can see this with my photo as well. Like, you can see in her photo, see how her eyes are a bit further apart and how her eyes are closer together. There's more definition in the face, basically. That's what they're recognizing. For me, they can see where my eyes end and where my nose starts, which they're actually paying close attention to where everything is. I think a lot of the time people try to assume on a flat surface that things are wider than they actually are because they want them to be, basically. But if it was in real life with you, you couldn't make that up because, well, like the main thing about my nose is it's got a hump on the front of it, and it's very, like, the nostrils are very slit like, and then basically I don't have a lot prominent forward, like when I look to the side with my nose, really. And it's not like a lot of width either. So that's why for me it's just like I don't have the phenotype you're trying to look for in me specifically that you would find specifically in other people. Say, for example, you find more in this Indian woman than you would find in me. Her lips are bigger, her nose is wider. Things are just different there. And, it's just what it is. You don't have to be mad because my features aren't like this lady's or this lady's or, any of these people. Like, everyone's beautiful the way they are. And just because you're a light skinned version of this lady or, this lady, it doesn't mean that, you have to be angry because someone has different features than you, I didn't even bring up my facial features in that video. But yeah, I mean, like, for me, for my personal experiences, I've literally talked about certain things, and it always seems like it triggers lighter skinned people, and then it triggers dark skinned people. It seems to trigger black people because I think black people don't have the same traits to actually be visibly ambiguous, even if they're lighter or darker skinned. If your features are, very noticeably African. So I think that's why people get triggered when I talk about this. Because I talk about this sometimes and I just talk about basically, like, I talked about, for example, my experience when I was at this one place and they literally tried to claim that I was a whole different ethnicity to black people, to the point where they thought I could have the ability to, specifically be racist to black people. I've had that happen before, and I've specifically talked about that story. I don't feel like going into depths about it, but I've talked about that and how, for me, I've had times where I just don't really fit in. And the thing is, it's not like I didn't want to fit in. I wanted to fit in, because it didn't really make any sense otherwise. It's always like, why? But then I realized when I would look at black people and I would look at people who to me look a little bit more familiar to them, like my mother, I would notice she still had a difference between them and her. And she gets asked if she's mixed. And she's much darker than me and has actually more Afrocentric features. But still, people tend to think that she's like not quite Black American. It's all going down to facial features. I don't understand why is it wrong to admit that people have confused you for mixed race much of your life. If it's a common question that's asked, if you're asked, what are you? What do you mix with on a regular basis? What's your nationality? Why can't you be honest about this? Why is it something that I have to try and pretend doesn't happen to me? Like, that's weird to me. And I feel like when you get both sides, like mixed people who I guess look like black people, and black people who are, on the darker end being angry about this, it's weird to me because it's like, I can't help the experiences I've had. I can't. If I remember, like I said, I once tried to put myself in the ebony section of my job, for that matter. That didn't work out because they were like, yeah, it didn't really work out at all because they were confused as to why I was even there. So, I mean, like, for me, I just feel it's easier for me to not really put a race on me when I am doing different types of work. Also, it is also annoying sometimes because it's like I can't even talk about like personal life stuff, like guys I've been involved with, guys I first talked to. I always feel like for me, I have to come out of the closet. Basically, that's how it is for me in my blackness. It's like I always have to come out of the closet, basically, where I have to tell people that I'm black. A lot of black people, they just show their photos. They don't specifically, like, for example, all my past boyfriends, my current, um, all of them I've found on either Bumble or Hinge or Tinder. No, I've never been. I was on Tinder for a little while, not really. There's another place I've found a couple guys on. But of those times when I be online and stuff, or in person for that matter, but the main thing would be that I would always have to come out and say I was black and not mixed, black. And for me, it's annoying, especially when people have a hard time discerning race or whatever, and then they don't want to even say that you're mixed. They don't know that you're mixed. Like, they don't know what your race is. When things like that happen, it's problematic because some people will date an Indian woman or Latina woman. Usually, when they'll date a Latino woman, they'll date a black woman. But, if they date an Indian woman or someone who's, Middle Eastern descent or someone who's brown but not quite black, to me, it's always more problematic because these type of people sometimes don't know who they're talking to or what they're getting into. It is kind of like, when do I come out to say I'm black? Because I mean, like, if you don't realize that, or you think I'm a brown woman, it gets to being a problem a bit. That's what my experience is out here in the Southwest region. And maybe it's because a lot of black people in the Southwest and Nevada and so forth are very dark. So sometimes they do not read brown skin as specifically a black color because Mexicans tend to be that color in the first place. But yeah, like, my personal life experiences are sometimes very different. And sometimes, sometimes you don't even realize it's different. Because, like, for example, some black people will say they experience certain things. And then I'll be like, well, I didn't experience that. And then I'll realize my mother didn't experience that. And then I think, is that because maybe, is it because they may have perceived her differently or perceived me differently than other black people? But when you talk about experiences and say, oh, my experiences were different because of that, or it could have been because we do regularly get asked if we're mixed or what are we? She gets asked if she's mixed, I think, or what her nationality is. I don't know if she's asked, what are you? I'm asked that, though, but yeah. Like, to me, if I'm honest, it bothers a lot of people, so I just don't talk about it. But it doesn't change that it's happening. So it's like, it's weird. It's like, you want me to talk about an experience I don't know about. It's just what it is. I'm sorry, sweetie. And then on top of it, it's like, even my personal experiences with being confused for people, for example. Like, I had an old ex-roommate by the name of Diana, and people always confused me for her. And she was a combination of black and Mexican, so she was biracial, but she wasn't a black looking biracial, in my opinion. She would say her personal experiences were not quite that of a black person. Like, that basically that black people would accept her because black people are very accepting, but also Mexicans would accept her too. It would go both ways, which was kind of odd, but interesting. It was interesting to see how she would interact with both types of people too, because she could speak Spanish. But yeah, for me, like that's my experience. And I'm not trying to claim that I'm the lightest skinned person. I never even talk about my skin being light. I said I was brown in the video. I don't understand why you're triggered by my skin tone, my hair texture being curly, or my facial features. I mean, like if I look black to you, what is bothering you? Because I never even talk about it. But when you ask me about it, what am I supposed to say? Oh, I've always been told I am too dark, okay? I am too dark. I'm too dark. I'm darker than Lupita, okay? My hair is so I only have 2 strands of hair, and the hair is like double 4C. I don't know. Like I mean, like, what do you want from me? I don't really know what you want, because I'm like, at this point, my features are my features. It's not like I'm trying to fake anything here. It is what it is, sweetie. No one's trying to fake anything on you. I mean, it is what it is. You trying to think that people are bleaching or people are wearing fake hair when their hair is curly naturally is kind of weird to me, and kind of like you're acting like you're jealous, upset, and I never even talked about me being ambiguous. You know, I, I don't like to talk about that because it's like, well, isn't that on the eye of the beholder? It is, honestly. And for me, I guess it's my luck. Most of the people I've interacted with in real life have generally treated me as if I was not black. Not white either, though. I'm not saying that I've ever been treated like I was white or anything, but it's just like not specifically black like that, like what you're thinking, like Lupita. It's not race is not just based on black and white, so that's just what that is. Honestly, when I deal with dark-skinned black people, they really do act like they own the race. That's why I was raging when I was younger, because I would rage about the fact that how dare you act like you own this race and all this stuff when you end up with DNA results with like 70% black, so shut the fuck up and all that stuff. But I kind of gotten to this point where I'm tired, and anyway, some of my arguments kind of fell through in those regards, because like I used to try and post a lot about Fulani people and show my people, because I was like, see, these are my people and they don't look like you and all this stuff, and they're full black and stuff. And then I found out, well, one, they're not full black, they're mixed to some extent, but not just that they're mixed, it's that taxonomy. With taxonomy, Fulanis specifically were not put in the black category in the first place. Neither were East Africans, neither were Tuaregs, Tubu people, Berber, Nubians. A lot of different people in Africa were not actually put in the Congoid race or the Capoid race, which are the black races. So for me, it's just like, it kind of deflated everything for me. I was like, okay. And then also the demeanor of those people, the Fulani, it's not very positive to people who are Bantu, basically, or Congoid race, basically, which is, I think, has to do with the Bantu expansion. You know, um, so, for me, it was just kind of like, I don't personally have anything against people who are black or anything. I tried to fight for that for a long time. You can look at my past videos. I'm fighting in comments, I'm fighting on videos, posting comments up and fighting on those videos and comments, trying to explain how I'm so much more black than so and so, and all this stuff. This point is just kind of like, yeah. The origin of my ancestors look very different than a lot of other West Africans. So it's just what it is, kind of like thing. I don't. I kind of also feel like learning it kind of explained everything I experienced as well. as far as people saying that, oh, because a lot of dark-skinned black people would always say, like I said, the North African heritage or the East African heritage for me. And I would specifically be like, why? Like, the North African would always be confusing to me, but they would say it in a way where it made me uncomfortable because they would say Middle East. And obviously, not specifically that, but they really meant like North Africa, basically. And, you know, to me, that was weird to me, because it was always like my ancestors are, they're generally Black American, Creole people. Some of them are just from the North and they're Black people. So, like for me, it was weird, but learning that the tribes are different and they were placed racially differently. Some were put in the Congoid race while others were put in the Hamitic race. And for mine, a majority of my ancestors were put in the Hamitic race. That for me is why I personally am just like, oh, okay, it explains everything. My experience, my mother's experience, so forth. Probably my mother's parents' experiences. I never really paid attention to them because they're old, and who really pays attention to how people are thinking their ethnicity is? But yeah, all in all, I want to say, trying to act like you're jealous of someone's skin tone and things of that nature, and wishing that, I was jealous of you or something of that nature is just weird to me. Because it's like, why are you trying to basically prove that colorism doesn't exist by admitting that someone who you're trying to claim is lighter than me is jealous of me? Because I didn't say I wanted to look like Robin Dixon. I wouldn't want to look like her. Like, why would I want to look like her? Not everyone wants to look like a white person. One. And Robin Dixon's nose is actually wider, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm not a fan of big noses. And I'm not a fan of big noses that are big for any reason. So if it's a very long nose, if the nose is very prominent, I'm just not a fan of those types of noses. I'm specific with this. I don't even like men with big noses. I'm always very specific on how his nose tip and his nose bridge and his nose, and how his nose, basically his nostrils. I like all of those to be very small and compact, basically, and direct and very positioned properly for me. That's just how I like it for men. I don't mind it being pointy either, as long as the point is not very long. If it's a long pointed nose, when I say long, I mean outward. A nose that falls outward, like heavily. Like you turn to the side and your nose is like Pinocchio. Like that's not my preference. But yeah, like to me, I'm like, I don't have any jealousy towards people like that. I don't. So, proving to people that, light skinned people can be jealous of brown skinned people is something I've been saying for a long time. So that's all I have to say in this video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Comment down below and have a great day.